Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is the City of Homestead Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021, and it is 5:45 p.m. The city will hold a hybrid CRA meeting. The public may participate in person at City Hall or virtually utilizing video conference via WebEx events or the toll-free conference call number. Please go to cityofhomestead.com/calendar for specific details and instructions on participation utilizing video and telephonic conferencing. The meeting can also be viewed live on the City Access channel or City website at cityofhomestead.com. Public comments may be made in person at the meeting or emailed to publiccomments@cityofhomestead.com. Written public comments are limited to 300 words per comment. Written public comments on specific agenda items should include your name, address, and the item you would like to comment on and your comment. It may be submitted by noon Monday, July 12, 2021, and will be included in the minutes. Written public comments on general matters should also include your name, address, and your comment, and may be submitted up until 30 minutes after the end of the CRA meeting and will be included in the minutes. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Roth? Here. Board Member Bailey? Here. Board Member Fletcher?
Here.
Board Member Avila?
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Faircloth-Staggers?
Here.
Chairman Losner?
Here. Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or deferrals tonight?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. We have before us the minutes from the May 11th, 2021 CRA board meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
Second.
Moved by the Vice Mayor.
Second.
Second by Councilman Fletcher. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Thank you. Next item is new business, tab 2, car number 3172, Commercial Enhancement Grant Award, Rumpole Unlimited, Inc.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a resolution of the Board of the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Homestead, Florida, approving the allocation of Commercial Enhancement Grant Program funds, approving a grant agreement, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Driver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The CRA Commercial Enhancement Grant Program furthers the goals of the CRA plan by improving property that will enhance the CRA's rebuilding program. Rumpole Unlimited has applied for a commercial enhancement grant for their building located at 144 North Crone Avenue. This is the building where Jacobson's Antiques is located. It is in the downtown district, which makes it eligible for a 90% contribution by the CRA and a 10% contribution by the applicant. The grant may cover building improvements consisting of removal and replacement of the building roof system, replacement of building air conditioning system, replacement of electrical fuse boxes, breakers, and wall outlets, ceiling lighting with energy-efficient lighting system, and/or repairs to the Jacobson's neon signage. Staff recommends the CRA Board approve a Commercial Enhancement Grant Award for Rumpole Unlimited for an amount not to exceed the maximum allowable of $25,000.
Thank you, Ms. Driver. Anything further?
I believe the applicant is on the line. He was having trouble logging in. Is there any way that we can tell if he's there or not?
Yes, I am here. H.C. Palmer.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Harry
Palmer. Please stand by, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer, this is Steve Losner. If you would give us your name and address for the record and any comments you would like to make on this item.
My name is Harry C. Palmer III. The address is 144 North Crome, Homestead. I greatly appreciate your consideration and approval of this grant so that we can update the premises. We are currently working on the lighting and the breaker and fuse boxes to make them more updated LEDs on the lighting to hopefully reduce electricity. And I will field any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I'm going to open the floor now up to the board members for any questions or comments they may have, so stand by. Board members, questions, comments? If none, then, is there anyone else online or in the room wishing to speak on this matter? Now I'll entertain a motion for approval. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment. We had a pretty lengthy conversation during our last WAC meeting, and I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Palmer, for thinking of little things like leaving the chandeliers on in the windows. You know, that makes a nice difference. I pass by Jacobson multiple times each day because that is where I need to turn in to go to my house. So just being able to see the same business there for 16 years now, and then not to mention that is a substantially large wall that you see while driving down Chrome. So I look forward to seeing what you do with it and hope, wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
And Mr. Palmer, I want to thank you for taking the effort to restore and revitalize the iconic sign, the Jacobson sign that's there. I think that's part of a vintage, quaint downtown, and it will be nice to see that lit once again. So with that, do we have a motion for approval? Moved by Board Member Fletcher,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Bailey. Roll call vote.
Board Member Fletcher? Yes. Board Member Ross? Yes. Board Member Avila?
Yes.
Board Member Bailey?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Fairclough Staggers? Chairman Losner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Any further reports? Is there anyone here wishing to make a general public comment regarding the CRA? With that, then, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved by Councilwoman Avila. Seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We'll be back in just a moment for our 6 o'clock Committee of the Whole meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Mr. Losner?
Yes, Mr. Palmer?
Yes, sir. Are you aware that David McDonald's on hospice now?
Yes, I am, and we're still on the public record, but I was aware of that. But thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, I thought you might want to know. Yes, sir. All right. Be blessed. Thank you. Take care.
We'll give those two absentees just a moment to find their way back to their seats. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Homestead Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. The City of Homestead will hold a hybrid Committee of the Whole meeting. The public may participate in person or at City Hall or virtually utilizing video conference via WebEx events or the toll-free conference call number. Please go to cityofhomestead.com/calendar for specific details and instructions on participation utilizing video and telephonic conferencing. The meeting can also be viewed live on the City Access channel or City website at cityofhomestead.com. Public comments can be made in person at the meeting or emailed to publiccomments@cityofhomestead.com. Written public comments are limited to 300 words per comment. Written public comments on specific agenda items should include your name, address, and the item that you would like to comment on, and your comment. It may be submitted by noon Monday, July 12th, and will be included in the minutes. Written public comments on general matters should also include your name, address, and your comment, and can be submitted up until 30 minutes after the end of the Committee of the Whole meeting, and will be included in the minutes. Madam Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Councilwoman Bailey?
Here.
Councilman Fletcher?
Here.
Councilman Ross? Councilwoman Avila? Here. Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers?
Here.
Mayor Losner?
Here. Madam Manager or Attorney, are there any additions, deletions, or deferrals?
No, Mr. Mayor, there are not.
Thank you. Our first item of business is the approval of the June 8th, 2021 Committee of the Whole minutes, and I'll entertain a motion for approval of the June 8th, 2021 Committee of the Whole minutes. Moved by Councilwoman Bailey. Seconded by the Vice Mayor. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item, tab 2. Motion to place car number 3141 on the council agenda. Amendment to interlocal agreement for CARES Act. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Back in August 19th, 2020, Council approved R 2020-0856 and entered into an interlocal agreement for Miami-Dade County for an allocation of CARES Act funds to reimburse the city for COVID-19 related expenses incurred through December 30th, 2020. The county has now extended that date to municipalities through September 30th, 2021, but only for the expenditure of unused funds allocated to the city. And back in October of 2020, Council approved 2 resolutions providing for up to, the item says $186,000, but it's actually $168,000 in 1% hazard pay to its first responders. And on December 30th, 2020, the city had approximately $86,000 in unused funds for the 1% hazard pay. And Mayor and Council, you may recall back when we were spending the CARES Act money, we were able to move money around, enabling us to spend all of it, but we were not allowed to move the hazard money around. We made an estimate, it was overestimated, so now there's this much money left, and we can do one of 2 things. We can give it back to the county, or we can give it to our first responders. So staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the interlocal agreement with Miami-Dade County, extending the date for the reimbursement of expenses incurred due to COVID-19 pursuant to the CARES Act through September 30th, 2021, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate revised memorandums of understanding with the 2 police unions to extend the period of time for paying the 1% hazard pay to coincide with the extended date provided in the amendment to the interlocal agreement.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? No. Councilwoman? No? Well, let me open the public hearing first. All right. But is there anyone online? None appearing. Anyone in the audience who would wish to speak on this matter? All right, we'll close the public hearing, and I believe we have a motion from Councilwoman Avila to approve or to place car number 3141 on the council agenda, the amendment to the interlocal agreement for CARES Act. Seconded by Councilman Roth. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item, tab 3, motion to place car number 3169 on the council agenda. Roof replacement, section C of the Gordon W. Ivy Power Plant and Annex Building. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This roof replacement, this award allows Garland DBS Inc. to procure all labor, materials, tools, equipment, as well as supervise the replacement of roof section C of the GWIV power plant and the roof of the annex building. Staff has determined it would be in the best interest of the city to purchase services from Garland DBS Inc. under the Omnia Partners contract. Omnia Partners is a governmental purchasing alliance serving all governmental agencies and provides nationally leveraged and competitively solicited purchasing contracts. Staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Garland DBS Inc. for the replacement of roof section C of the GWIV power plant and the roof of the annex building for a total of $109,206. This project is part of the city's capital improvement plan, CIP number 0925.
Thank you. Are there any initial questions or comments from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Fletcher.
Yes, thank you. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but looking for local vendor preference. Did we have any local vendors bid on this this particular activity?
Councilman, Garland went out, they have a list of vendors down here in Miami. They went out and sent out bid requests to all of them. I don't believe any local vendors responded.
Okay, yeah, I find it difficult to understand that a company out of Cleveland, Ohio is winning the bid in South Florida. So it's just one of those things. I go back to our previous committee meeting that we just held, and one of the local businesses found a local roofer to fix their roof. So it's just one of those things I'm going to continue to harp on as we move forward. We need to provide preference to our local businesses. And if, again, we don't have the means to get that message out there, I'd like to think again about holding a workshop with local businesses on how they can do business with the city.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman?
That's exactly what I was going to say, and if we have some additional time, maybe we can defer this item and see what local vendors we can get out, have them come out and give us a quote on this, because it's a roofing job and we have plenty of roofers in town we can get a quote from.
Councilwoman, Garland went out and actually did a bid. So if we were to reach out to local vendors now and say, give me a quote, it wouldn't really truly be a solicitation, if you gather my meaning there. In other words, they'll know what our prices were, and then they can go ahead and underbid.
Okay, could they let us know which vendors they went out to?
I think the vendors are actually listed in the bid document if you go further in. And for each section, for the C roof, I think they listed the vendors that they actually spoke to and got quotes. And the same thing for the annex building, if I'm not mistaken.
I see MP General, Better Built Roofs, and PSI. Those are the three estimates that came in. Those are the local vendors?
Oh, I don't know if they're local or not.
I think those are the respondents, not necessarily those who were notified of the opportunity.
Okay, perhaps this is water under the bridge for now, but I definitely would like to promote how to do business with the city to get these opportunities more visible to our vendors. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Anything further from council? Is there anyone online wishing to speak on this matter? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this matter? And I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion to place this car number 3169 on the council agenda. Roof replacement, section C of the GWIV power plant and annex building. We have a motion for approval. Moved by Councilman Fletcher. Second by Councilwoman Bailey. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is a motion to place car number 3211 on the council agenda, tab 4, the collective bargaining agreement, IBEW. Is that you, Madam Manager?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mayor. And this item and the two items after it are collective bargaining agreements with IBEW, PBA lieutenants, and the third one is PBA police officers, detectives, sergeants, and correction officers. I can read them all into the record at once if you like, and/or we could do them one at a time, whatever your pleasure, Mayor.
Let's read them all together if that's...
Okay. So item 3211, collective bargaining agreement with the IBEW. During the term of this agreement, the bargaining unit employees will receive a 1.5% cost of living adjustment in the first year, effective June 1st, 2021, and a 2.5 COLA for the second year, effective October 1st, 2021. No changes were made to benefits. There were some non-substantive language changes that made throughout the agreement, plus the addition of a small longevity stipend for those employees employed longer than 30 years. The COLAs and the 30-plus year stipend will be applied across the board to non-bargaining employees effective June 1st and October 1st as well. On this item, staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Homestead and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers for the term of October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2022. And then the next item is card number 3218, collective bargaining agreement with PBA lieutenants. During the term of this agreement, the bargaining unit employees will receive a 1.5% cost of living adjustment in the first year effective June 1st, 2021, and a 2.5 COLA for the second year effective October 1st, 2021. No changes were made to benefits. There were some non-substantive language changes made throughout the agreement, plus the increase of $20 per month to the clothing allowance. Bargaining unit employees have agreed that state premium tax revenues received by the city, including any excess, shall be retained by the plan to assist the city in paying for the pension benefits during the term of this agreement. Staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Homestead and the Police Benevolent Association for Lieutenants for the term October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2022. And card number 3219, collective bargaining agreement, PBA police officers, detectives, sergeants, and correction officers. During the term of this agreement, the bargaining unit employees will receive a 1.5% cost of living adjustment in the first year, effective June 1st, 2021, and a 2.5 COLA for the second year, effective October 1st, 2021. No changes were made to benefits. There were some non-substantive language changes made throughout the agreement, plus the increase of $20 per month to the clothing allowance. Bargaining unit employees have agreed that state premium tax revenues received by the city, including any excess, shall be retained by the plan to assist the city in paying for the pension benefits during the term of this agreement. Staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Homestead and the Police Benevolent Association for police officers, detectives, sergeants, and correction officers for the term of October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Manager. And unless there are any objections, we'll have a collective discussion and obviously vote on these items individually. So, Council? Councilwoman?
It was an exhaustive conversation for many, many meetings, and I'm happy to motion and approve all of these all at once or individually, however you'd like, Mayor. Thank you.
I think we're going to have to vote on them individually.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone online wishing to address any of these items? No? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on any of these? Mr. Pearl? Your microphone's on.
Oh,
if you needed
no, I was just chiming in for the individual votes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, then, we will take tab 4 first. Car number 3211, the collective bargaining agreement with the IBEW. If there's nothing further, then I will entertain a motion to approve. Moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilwoman Avila. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next is tab 5, motion to place car number 3218 on the council agenda, the collective bargaining agreement for the PBA lieutenants. We have a motion to approve. Moved by Councilman Roth. Seconded by Councilwoman Avila. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And tab 6, motion to place car number 3219 on the council agenda, the collective bargaining agreement, PBA, police officers, detectives, sergeants, and correction officers. Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Councilwoman Avila, seconded by Councilman Fletcher. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, and congratulations to all who brought this to fruition. Thank you. All right. Next item, tab 7, motion to place car number 3067 on the council agenda, Losner Park Playground Shade Sales. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is for the playground shade sales for the Losner Park expansion. These were the subject of the council discussion some months ago when the council pointed out the need for these shades over the playground area. Staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Compan Inc. for the purchase of playground shade sales and installation at Losner Park for a total of $134,870. This purchase is in accordance with U.S. Communities Contract 201-700-1135. The shade sales and structures come with a 10-year warranty. Funding for this purchase will come from park impact fees. The project is part of the city's capital improvement plan, CIP number 546.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Councilman Fletcher.
Mr. Mayor, I did not see any data, reflecting if this was put out for any type of bid. Do we have that available, or was this just a choice to pick this one company because they had a state contract?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the big document that was put out was a piggyback off a U.S. Communities Contract, Exhibit 2, which was a solicitation that was done in North Carolina, state of North Carolina County of McKellenburg. So we're piggybacking off their existing contract.
I understood. Again, I'm just going to continue to throw it out there that we need to continue to look at vendors that are in the local South Florida area. I know there are many different park services that provide these same type of structures that are at places all over the southeast. So again, it's just another reiteration that we really do need to have this workshop with these local vendors and get that message out there to them so they can do business with us. That's all.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for bringing this back to us after we expressed concern for lack of shade for our children that would be accessing this playground. My question is, I looked at the rendering and the triangular structures look great. What color will they be? Because I'm thinking long-term, and I know that specific colors withstand the elements better, and we don't want it looking like some of our shade structures, particularly in Roby George, Blakey Park, where they're starting to fade. So what colors will these structures be?
My understanding from Pedro is that Sasaki and Associates is doing the color design, but we'll get that information to you and the rest of the council.
As long as they are able to withstand the elements and stay looking nice and fresh longer, as opposed to pretty colors that won't hold up well. So, but I'm
Yes,
sure
ma'am.
they'll make a great decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. That's one of the items I looked for as I was going through the packages. Okay, what color is it? Does it go, and how will it hold up? Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mayor. I had the exact same question because, again, multiple times a day driving by there and I see the neon green of the structure already popping out, so I was curious what color it was going to be. And if they do choose an interesting color, that we make sure we stay on top of it and that that's included in the 10-year warranty, that they're replaced as soon as we see any changes in the color. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Also, for ongoing maintenance, we need to make sure that we have some type of soft washing to help eliminate the city mold that will accumulate on these sales. We have some of these in our yard, and it can accumulate, and if you don't have a maintenance, it's hard to get rid of once it gets really stuck on. Thank you.
Thank you. Good comments all. All right. Is there anyone online? Anyone in the audience? All right, we'll close the public hearing and now entertain a motion to place this item, car number 3067, on the council agenda, the Losner Park Playground Shade Sales. shade sales, tarps. We have a motion by Councilwoman Avila, second by Councilwoman Bailey. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Next item, tab 8, motion to place car number 3183 on the council agenda, the trustee squad agreement with the Department of Corrections, number W1233. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of the agreements we have with the Department of Corrections, and this agreement will replace contract W1111, which expires October 29th, 2021. The trustee squad consists of 1 correction officer and 5 inmates. The crew provides daily cleaning, landscaping, and other minor maintenance necessary for both the CRA and Parks and Recreation Department. The CRA will pay 70% and Parks and Rec will pay 30% of the trustee squad cost. Staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the State of Florida Department of Corrections for 1 inmate work squad to assist the Parks and Recreation Department and the Community Redevelopment Agency for a total of $57,497. This is a 1-year agreement with the option to renew for 1 additional 3-year period in whole or part upon the same terms, conditions, and mutual written consent of both parties. And this agreement, which will be replacing W1111, is under the same terms and the same cost. And if we don't have the inmates, we don't pay it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Seems like we've already had this discussion. Councilwoman.
From the workshop earlier? Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed that part because I did want to mention, I had spoke a little bit to the city manager about, are we doing everything that we can to make sure that our inmates have all the vaccine opportunities that our residents are getting. Not only does this help us out tremendously, but for a lot of inmates, it is great. It's a great opportunity for work placement, hopefully when they get out. So it's just a win-win all across. So if there's any information that we can get,
Steve Taylor has reached out to the agency to find out what their efforts are, but they do have a plan. He sent us an article on what they're doing to get them vaccinated, so we'll be able to provide that through council.
fantastic. I thought maybe there was an opportunity through Mujer, one of the other organizations that are doing all those outreach programs, to just make sure that we're not forgetting about them.
Okay, we can certainly look into that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anything further? Is there anyone online? Anyone in the audience? We'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion to place this item on the council agenda. Moved by Councilwoman Bailey, seconded by Councilwoman Avila. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item, tab 9. Motion to place car number 3209 on the council agenda. ITB number 2021-20, pool operations and lifeguard services. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On April 9th, 2021, the Procurement and Contract Services Division issued ITB 202120, pool operations and lifeguard services for the pool at Ruby George Park. Notices were sent to 473 vendors and 3 responses were received. After thorough review, Miami Lifeguards LLC was found to be the most responsible bidder. Staff recommends that Mayor and Council authorize the City Manager to award ITB number 202120, pool operations and lifeguard services to Miami Lifeguards LLC for the estimated annual expense of $125,000. This is a 3-year agreement with the option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods upon the same terms and conditions and the mutual written consent of both parties.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Yes, Councilwoman Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to clarify, this $125,000 will be for both lifeguard services and keeping up the pool itself and the bathrooms, Monday through 7 days a week. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Fletcher?
Yes, I did have this discussion with the Assistant City Manager. In the past, I know we did have a city employee who was trained and qualified for the pool operation, the chemicals and daily or weekly requirements of that. And I just asked the question that they look into possibly looking into that again. If we can do that with somebody in-house, that should save us quite a bit of money. And I don't know about the restroom cleaning on a 7-day visit. It seems pretty expensive. $1,000 or $2,000 a month, depending on what services they provide. Just something to look into, that we may be able to, again, utilize that word efficiency, again, to utilize services we do have in-house, or potentially use the trustees to clean those restrooms or what have you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Good point. Absolutely so. Anything further from council? Is there anyone online? Anyone in the audience? None appearing then, I will entertain a motion to place car number 3209 on the council agenda for the pool operation and lifeguard services. Moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilwoman Bailey. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item, tab 10. Motion to place car number 3213 on the council agenda, Homestead Sports Complex Survey. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Homestead's Parks and Recreation Department is in the process of applying for grants to redevelop the Homestead Sport Complex. As part of the grants application process, the city must obtain a survey of the entire site. Staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with J. Bonfil and Associates, Inc., pursuant to RFQ number 201502, professional architectural and engineering services, to survey the 138.2 acres at the Homestead Sport Complex for a total of $51,320.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Councilman Fletcher?
Yeah, thank you. We did discuss this earlier in the budget meeting, but I just again want to throw it out there that Mr. Patrick Gleber and Mr. Boomer Gonzalez in the Keysgate area do have the funds available, approximately $250,000, to help support this project. This would save the city $51,000 if we're able to utilize those funds. If we need, you need to be put in contact with them, I can ensure that happens, but I think we can move. Can we move forward with approval with the option of possibly getting that money donated to cover these costs in the future?
You can authorize it you can authorize the staff to move forward and we'll place this on the agenda, and if we can reach a reimbursement agreement with Mr. Lieber and his associate in the future, that money can be funneled back in for those specific purposes as a reimbursement.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And kind of to piggyback on some of the earlier sentiments, I happen to know from my practice that there are really no local surveyors in our immediate area anymore. And I know this was done on a professional services basis. Do we have a history with them? And it seems to, I want to say it seems to be reasonable, but lately I've been in situations where I've had two proposals for the same survey, that one was $1,500 and one was $6,000. Why didn't we reach out? Did we not reach out to others, or are we confident that this was as good as it gets?
This falls under architectural and engineering services. So the city in 2015 went out for RFQ. What they did is put a list of future projects, right? And because this falls under that professional services RFQ, basically we have to, they at that time when they submit their proposals give us their per hour rates and things like that. So these rates have been locked in since 2015. So when we pick, if the job is over $35,000, we have to pick somebody off that CCNA list. If not, we have to do a total RFQ again for all kinds of architectural and engineering services. So once again, the pricing is locked in 2015 rates.
So they're honoring pricing from 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Take it and run before they realize their mistake. It's just amazing how I've seen the cost of surveys just skyrocket. Right. And a big part of that is that the one surveyor we had here in town for 40 years retired. Oh, wow. It's difficult to get anything quickly anymore. All right. Any further on this from council? All right. Is there anyone in the audience or online? None appearing. A motion to approve?
Move it.
Moved by Councilwoman Avila. Second by Councilman Fletcher. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Next item is tab 11. Motion to place car number 3210 on the council agenda, the Department of Children and Family Settlement Agreement. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The State of Florida Department of Children and Families, DCF, became the administrator of all Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence, FCADV, grant contracts on 7/1/2020. The City of Homestead had a grant from FCADV in the amount of $72,000 that funds one full-time domestic violence detective. The grant was transferred over to DCF in August 2020. DCF has been working toward providing all grantees with new contracts. Until the new contracts are available, and in order to reimburse grantees for services rendered, DCF has provided the city with a settlement agreement and release from 7/1/2020 through 1/30/2021 in the amount of $46,135.57. There will be a second settlement agreement at a later date that will cover from 2/1/2021 through 6/30/2021. Staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the settlement agreement and relief with the State of Florida Department of Children and Family Services and establish a budget in the amount of $46,135.57 for domestic violence investigation services.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Is there anyone online? Anyone in the audience? Entertain a motion to place this item on the council agenda. Moved by Councilman Bailey, seconded by Councilman Avila. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Let's see, 6:25. Let's see what happens. All right. Motion to, next item, tab 12. Motion to place car number 3264 on the council agenda. Charter Review Committee recommendations. Mr. Pearl?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The last time the council discussed the Charter Review Committee, they authorized the committee to reconvene and examine further issues. There was an original presentation of about 9 items that were whittled down. The Charter Review Committee reconvened a few months ago, has some redundant recommendations as well as one significant new recommendation. The way that I'd like to handle this, if it's okay with the council, is to go through the individual recommendations, get a sense from the council whether they are okay with each one, because the council has the option to move forward with all, some, or none of them, as has been done in the past. So, and assuming we're all, unless someone wants to make a motion to accept it as it is, I'll take the time and I'll go through each of the questions and proposed changes. I'll take an individual vote on those to see if we want to include them going forward. And we can make adjustments to the resolution as we go. So if it's okay, we can start with the first question, unless any of you have
Council's
comments, thoughts on how you'd like to proceed here.
Individual items? All right.
Yes? Okay.
Thank you.
So the first proposal is one that was this council has seen before. It's an extension of the mayoral term of office from 2 to 4 years. And so the city charter currently provides the mayor shall be elected to serve a 2-year term of office. Shall the charter be amended to provide the mayor shall be elected to serve a 4-year term of office and include applicable transition provisions. With respect to the applicable transition provisions, that will deal with the timing of when that first theoretical 4-year term of office would come into play, and that will depend on what the council chooses, whether the council chooses to place one of the other proposals on to the ballot as well, and the outcome of that election. I'll touch on the transition provisions later, but if I can get a sense of where we are with question number 1, is there a motion to move forward with that individual question or not? Somebody can give me a little direction.
Council? And this is a difficult one because depending upon whether some of the other questions are placed on the ballot or approved if placed on the ballot, governs the effective date of.
And I'm happy to run through those scenarios now. I was going to do it when we address the other question, but I'm happy to run through those scenarios now if you think it would be helpful for the discussion.
Well, and I guess you're asking, is is the concept of a four-year term going on the ballot off the table or subject to consideration? So I guess that's, Mr. Pearl's looking for some direction on that as to whether or not we even want to entertain that concept under the various scenarios tonight. Council, Mr. Fletcher.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, based off of the review and the continual recommendations from the Charter Review Committee, I believe that ultimately we need to move forward with placing the four-year term capability for the mayor onto the ballot for the public to vote on that. I think it's only a matter of time before something like this occurs, and I think we need to set the precedence now. And again, this could be 5, 6, 7 years from now before this ever happens.
It will depend. There's the proposal that will impact the timing of the implementation is whether or not the city elects to transition. One of the other proposals is to transition to on-cycle elections. And so the various, but assuming that this were a standalone item and we weren't dealing with that, then we would implement in 2023. If this were a standalone item, then the mayoral term commencing in 2023 would be 4 years and follow that cycle going forward.
Would it be 2023, or would it go to the voters in 2023 to approve?
No, it's proposed to go to the voters now to be in effect for the
Okay.
23
Correct.
election.
The discussion that was had at the committee level was that nobody's term, and this is true of the council members if we go on cycle, nobody's current term should be impacted by the proposed changes. So all of the implementation takes into account future implementation so that it's not impacting the current term of any sitting member.
Okay, I understand, and you know, all things being equal, I really believe that the mayor's term should be 4 years. Again, that's my personal thoughts. We'll see what my colleagues think. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fletcher. Any further comment? Or I guess maybe we need to go deeper into the transitional discussions. Councilman Roth?
Yeah, I'll just give you thank you, Mayor, my 2 cents worth on the 4-year term. You were part of all the charter review meetings, and I don't know if it had come up, but how do we, how does that affect the uneven balance of elections every 2 years? Because in that scenario, you'll have 4 members of the council and mayor running every 4 years, and you'll have 3 running the opposite years. So you basically are creating an imbalance in the attraction to our election because you don't have the excitement of a mayor's race in one set of the council seats. So you don't know who that's, at this point, we don't know who that would be if it's, 3, 4, or 5, or 1, 2, or 3. We don't know where the imbalance is going to occur. And my other thought is that, the mayor's seat on council is probably the one that's everybody looks at. He's or she, whomever's sitting there at the time, and obviously we're doing this for the future, that's a seat that demands a lot of respect, but I also think it demands the public's vote every 2 years. It's a seat you earn. You basically have the same power sitting in that seat as any council member does as it comes to voting on different items. And I think that it's a privilege to be elected by the citizens every 2 years to be the mayor of the city of Homestead. So those are my thoughts. One, creating the imbalance on each election cycle. In other words, if in the future, if it was a 3, 4, 5 district, we would never have the option or the privilege of running with a mayor that would be running for election. And then the other 3 seats would have that privilege of running with a mayor and that different excitement. So just a thought to consider that. I don't know how other cities do it. I don't know how they handle the imbalances of elections, but it's pretty obvious in our city. The mayor's election is the most exciting part of our election usually. And I think other people have brought it up also, that if you did get a mayor and council that was not so productive, you'd still have to wait 4 years to change a non-productive council and mayor. So that's also something to consider. Thank you for letting me have my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, other than, there's an election every 2 years. Yeah, so, you're not stuck for 4 years with the whole bad wing of the party, so to speak. Anyone else wish to weigh in? So,
Okay, that's pretty limited.
let's go forward.
So do we have a consensus? Can I have a motion to continue to leave this on this particular question to move forward with this question?
So you want a motion,
I was
at
gonna
least
go one by
conceptually,
one.
to move forward with a four-year
Yes, so
term for
then
mayor?
I know I can adjust as we
Okay.
go.
Thank you.
So if I could take a motion for each question, that'd be great.
We have a motion. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I'm procedurally, I'm just trying to follow where we're going here. So we're taking all of these one by one, and we're weighing in on them?
So, yes, what I'd like to do, and what we have done previously, is because you have the option of selecting which questions you want included on the resolution, you can vote each one of them. We have historically voted independently on each one, and then voted to adopt a resolution on whatever was left. So to the extent that we were to take a question now on the mayoral term of office, if the motion to place that on the agenda fails, then that question will be excluded from the resolution, and we'll move on to the next one. And only those questions whose motion to include them in the resolution will be there at the end, and then we'll take one final vote to move the resolution forward with the included questions and proposed charter amendments.
Oh, okay. Because we're on the topic of the four-year term for the mayor, I'm kind of torn on this a little bit because I believe in letting the voters make the decision. I don't know if I necessarily want to block the voters from making a decision, whether or not they would like for the mayor to be on the ballot every 4 years or every 2 years. I agree with Councilman Raw to a certain extent that I don't know if it's an excitement to have the mayor on the ballot. It may be an excitement for us, not sure for the mayoral candidates, but it is the big ticket. What do they say in what is it, boxing? Like the main draw or something like that? The main event. That is the main event, and it is a draw to bring people out when they know that the mayor is on the ballot. So I can understand why having the mayor on the ballot every 2 years makes sense, because it's the main ticket, the main draw, whatever you call it. But I think the voters should make that decision whether or not they want the mayor on the ballot every 2 years or every 4 years. So and I'm a little torn with it. So I'll rest there for now.
All right, so do we have a motion to move the four-year question forward for mayor?
I'll make the motion and move it forward.
Moved by Councilman Fletcher, and I'll second it. Any further comments from council? Is there anybody online? Anyone in the audience? Any further from council?
I do just,
Yeah,
excuse
sure.
me, thank you, I'm sorry. Do want to say that it was on the ballot once before, and it was denied by the voters, so that's a consideration. I don't know how many years ago it was, maybe 10, 12 years ago, that it was out there, so. But I also agree that maybe it's up to the voters to make that determination. So we'll see where it goes.
Well, I think it was on the ballot in 2010 when we were a community of 40,000, not 80,000 plus. A lot of things have changed since 2010. All right, so I think we have a motion and a second. Anything further? We'll have a roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Raw,
No.
Councilwoman Bailey, Councilman Fletcher,
Yes.
Councilwoman Avila.
No.
Vice Mayor Faircloth Staggers,
Yes.
Mayor Losner,
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Next item, Mr. Pearl.
question number 1 will be included. The next item deals with term limits, and the question is proposed as this. The city charter currently permits individuals to serve a maximum of 12 consecutive years as council member or 8 consecutive years as mayor. Shall the charter be amended to impose an additional limit restricting consecutive service to a total of 12 years of combined service as council member or mayor? So the practical impact of this would be, under current charter rules, if you had a council person who were to serve 2 terms theoretically, they would not have reached the maximum years of service, and so they would theoretically be eligible for 8 consecutive years as mayor, sitting on the dais for a total of 16 years. This would be a 12-year hard cap, regardless of which seat you were sitting in. And for clarification, one of the questions I seek for you to answer if you choose to move forward is, we want this imposed on people who are currently sitting on the council, or is it prospective? Because unless something is defined as having retroactive activity, it won't be construed that way. So if I get some clarification on how we would like this applied, that would also be great.
Thank you, Mr. Pearl. And I guess the root, I'm going to step out on a limb here and say the root of Mr. Pearl's question about whether or not it will apply to anyone who sits here now versus those who come after us is that while there are some members of the 2002 Charter Review Committee who believe the intent was to establish that 12-year hard cap, the minutes, let's just say they're not determinative one way or the other. What's recorded is not necessarily in accord with memories, and it kind of hits all over the place. So, you know, again, his ultimate question to us is, and let's use real world examples. I guess John Burgess would be a fair example, correct? That had he in his 10th year resigned to run for mayor, he could have had the opportunity to have served 10 on council and an additional 8. You know, unless Mr. Shelley resigns the way rules are written now prior to the end of his term, he cannot seek the mayor's seat. Same issue with the vice mayor as she comes to her 12-year council cap 2 years from now. So, and again, not to be redundant, the question is, are we going to look backward or look forward with a date commencing whatever the date needs to be? No, council?
Yeah, thank you. So this kind of affects me too if I decide to run. So I have a 2-year stint from 1999 to 2001.
You had a gap. You had a 2-year gap.
You had a 2-year
That
gap.
gap, you have a break in service, so those 2 years would not be counted
They don't
towards
even
your
count.
total term.
Okay. I thought if we were going back, they would count.
Again, a more recent example. Yeah.
Still, I'm sorry, it's still 12 consecutive years of service, so that you had certainly more than a 2-year break.
Yep, got it.
Just like Burgess and Porter will have their 2-year gap. So, you know, your prior doesn't count. Councilwoman Avila?
So if the mayor's term does go through with a 4-year term, that would mean that a council member would have to make the decision to run for mayor after serving only 2 terms, so that the 2 terms plus their mayoral term is a total of 12 years, correct?
Yes, but one of the other, you would make that decision after the second served term as opposed to midway through your third. Irrespective of this, if we move forward with the second, there's another proposal, which is, I think, to your point about, you know, what if Councilman Shelley were to resign today? In order to prevent that, One of the other proposals, which we'll get to, is that if you have served a portion of your term for the purposes of calculating the term limits, you have served all of the term. So that resignation all the way through, you would be credited with your full service. So assuming that were to pass, and you had this in place with a 12-year hard cap, that resignation or from your council seat after 10 years of service to move over, that would not be available. What would be available is after you have served 2 full terms, or 8 years, you could then run for mayor for a single 4-year term if a 4-year term is adopted, or 2 2-year terms, depending on the outcome of the election.
Yeah, I have a concern with that, and I think that I would have preferred going through each item, weighing in, asking Q&A, developing a good sound idea of how everything affects each other, because
Okay.
it is very much a web of cause and effect, to then vote at the end. Because as much as I can understand, having been in boards and positions, that 4 years really is the right amount of time to have a good impact and effect on any kind of agenda you want to have, I think that the mayoral seat is something that should come after a tenure, after practice, after proving yourself. Like Councilman Roth has said, it's one of those seats that after 1 year or 2 years or 2 terms, having to make that decision right there and then that I want to be a mayor of a city, I would probably like to do the 3rd term and halfway through vacate and then decide. But these suggestions are making you kind of force your way up that ladder instead of going through a time-tested process that we've had in place. Is there any objection to kind of just going through these and having the discussion and then deciding and voting at the end, or do we have to vote on each one?
Well, I'm happy to go through each of them collectively for discussion, and then we can vote on each one. I will need an individual vote on the questions on what you want to move forward on, but if you feel that it'd be beneficial to have a holistic picture by going through them for discussion purposes and seeing how they're interrelated, then I'm happy to go through each of them. We can have that collective discussion. You can see what impacts what, and then we can circle back and take individual votes on the remaining questions. It's entirely up to you.
I was just using me as an example, not premonition.
Well, with the exception of the transition to an even year election, these are all questions that we spent one night online for about 5 hours that you were an active participant in that conversation. This is not new. The basic premise here is that in 2002, 85 to 88% of the people who voted in an election voted for term limits. Without something being done, there is the potential for someone to serve nearly 20 consecutive years, as opposed to what I believe was the intention that 12 years is sufficient, is one sufficient run, however you want to mix it up.
So this would put a hard 12-year cap. The other, if we move forward, the subsequent question about serving all of the years of your term, if you have resigned, preventing resignation in order to defeat the term limits, would be an effective 16-year cap, because once you would not be able to resign during that time to break your chain of service. And so you would theoretically be able to do, but that 16 years would be 8 as council, 8 as mayor, because had you served your 12 consecutive as council, you would be required to take your 2-year break from the dais, because you would have achieved that maximum year service. So there are multiple ways in which this is being addressed in the various questions. The hard 12 is one. The calculation of years of service, being your entire term, regardless of whether or not you resign, being the other. So I need a little direction. Councilwoman Avila seems to want to go through everything. I don't know. I'm happy to take your direction. If you want to go through each of these again, we can do it and circle back, or we can just continue going. If the council can give some direction, I perceive the kink that's been thrown out there as
at least one member of this body wants to have a discussion on every item and then vote
Okay.
individually. That's just one. The others need to weigh in. And I would look to my colleagues to do so. Vice Mayor?
I'm okay either way. I already know my position on each one of them. We've spoken about this. I read the minutes, so I am willing to go with the will of this body. I'm prepared to go either way.
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat, Mr. Mayor. We've discussed this at length. It's time to move forward and make a decision.
I agree. Yeah, same result. It's just a matter of how we get there. Just as a practice note, every question stands on its own 2 feet. Pulling, correct, Ms. Pearl, pulling one out does not really impact any of the others. They all have to be standalone. So to a certain extent, if one doesn't go, it really has no impact on the others.
The impact on whether the other questions or the other proposed amendments to the charter are made is zero. The impact, and I've spoken to each of you about this individually, is the implementation of the changes. And if we've reviewed I'm happy to review again the transition provisions, because if you have even year election cycles, you have to, and a 4-year mayoral term, you have one set of circumstances to accommodate that transition. If you have even year election cycles and a 2-year mayoral term, you have a second. And if you remain on odd year election cycles and have the 4-year mayoral term, that is your last set of circumstances. The others, while they may be related, won't necessarily impact the implementation of the other.
Yeah, I think that's the piece that I think we really need to dig a little deeper and flesh out more. The other ones I'm okay with, but that one, we need to slow that one down and talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
But I think issues have.
So the transitional provisions, whenever we do a charter amendment, you have to include some transition provisions, unless it's just a pretty right thing to change, talking about the timing of implementation and how and who it's going to affect. And this had been done previously when we transitioned to consistent 4-year terms many years ago. Transition provisions provided for which seats would make that accommodation at what times. Similarly here, with 2 of the questions, we have to talk about the timing of how things would happen. There's the potential question of changing the election cycle, as well as the extension of the mayor's term from 2 to 4 years. And so the way that I address that, having not wanted to include in the charter itself a bunch of if this, thens, that's. If you look at section 3 in the charter provisions, I spell it out and say, basically, the approval or disapproval of certain proposed charter amendments will impact the time and manner in which other proposed amendments will be implemented. Accordingly, only the applicable transition provisions will be incorporated into the charter as follows. So the first alternative is if both of those things are approved, if the transition to even year elections and the extension of the mayoral term of office from 2 years to 4 years are approved, the transition would be as follows. And so what you'd have is, with respect to council member seats, council member terms commencing in 2023 will be 5 years and expire in November 2028, and council member terms commencing in November 2025 shall be 5 years, expiring in 2030. And each subsequent council term will be 4 years, and notwithstanding that, the additional year of service required to accomplish the transition to even year election cycles shall not count towards the total years of service for the purposes of calculating term limits. And the discussion around that was, if we want to do that, you don't want to penalize people and deny them a term of office. So the additional year of service should not count towards your 12-year limit, because if it did, you'd be effectively eliminating 3 years of potential eligibility. So the committee did not believe that was fair. Now, if that happens and the mayoral term is expected, the mayoral term commencing in 2023 shall be 2 years. The mayoral term commencing in 2025 shall be 3 years as sort of a transition to bridge to the full 4-year term, and the first 4-year term would commence in 2028. And the discussion that was had at the committee level was it would be easier to swallow for the voters to go from 2, 3, 4 than from 2 to 5, essentially giving the 4-year term plus the year to transition. So this smoothed that transition. And so that is the way it would be implemented if each of those were to be adopted. Alternative 2 addresses in the event the transition to even year elections is approved, but the extension to the mayoral term of office from 2 to 4 years is not approved. So you would have the council member terms would be the same. You'd have the same transition periods with the 5-year terms commencing in 23 and 25. For mayoral implementation, you'd have the term in 2023 would be 2 years. Term commencing in 2025 would be 3 years. It would be the single year to transition to the even terms, and then it would revert back to 2 years every year thereafter. Again, the additional year of service required to make the transition to the even year election cycle would not count towards your term limits. And the third alternative is the simplest. If there is no transition to the even year election cycle, then the mayoral term commencing in 2023 will be 4 years and 4 years henceforth. Mayor, did I accurately capture the discussion there? I don't want to step out of bounds.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely so. It's what do you call it, Jenga puzzle? Whack-a-mole. Mr. Fletcher, did you want?
Yeah, I'd just like to point the fact out that, you know, right now we have a pretty engaged group of civic people that come out and vote on our odd years currently, and some of our ballots, even at those times, get rather lengthy. If we start rotating this into even year election cycles and we get on a presidential cycle, some of these ballots are going to have 40 or 50 items on them, and it's going to take forever to make sure everybody understands what those items are. What was it, last election? I believe we had, like almost 20 items on the ballot last even year election, 2020, for county items as well as a couple of small items for the city. So I think that it's going to take a lot of education for personnel to understand, when I say personnel, citizens to understand what those ballots mean. And for that reason, I would not be willing to support moving to an even year type of election cycle.
Thank you, nor do I. Council, did you?
I think that as much as I appreciate a more informed voter, I think that pushing for more voters to come out and participating in our election, it brings value to our community, it brings awareness. I think the burden should lie on us as leaders to push our residents to be more involved civically so that they can feel responsible to come out and to vote. And I think that those who do come out to vote during odd years will come out and vote either way during election years. So for the purposes of having increased voter turnout and more participation in our elections, I would be in favor of this.
Let me be more succinct. I believe that if we transition to an even year, it continues to favor incumbents because the sheer numbers of voters that you have to do outreach for increases exponentially, and clearly incumbents have the fundraising edge when it comes to that. I believe that even years will partisanize our nonpartisan race. And to your point, it will bring out people who are maybe single issue voters who may not even go to the end of that ballot, or if they do, maybe they vote on gender or ethnicity or whatever basis they see, and you're not really, we're getting engaged voters. Let me give you an example. I think we'd be lost at the end of the ballot. During the 2020 cycle, because my son was involved in a couple of campaigns, we saved every piece of mail from the primaries and the general that came to our house. Every race, from county, state, federal. We counted over 250 pieces of mail that came to the voters who were registered, came to our household. A city race, for me, would be lost in the shuffle. I'm more about quality voters than quantity voters. Those of us who have run campaigns and expended blood, sweat, and tears and our own money know how hard it is to get people out. But those people that we brought out with our money and our efforts were there to vote for us or against us. They weren't casual voters, and I don't believe that it's appropriate for our community. It will become partisanized. And when you look at the 5 largest cities in Miami-Dade, I think only one of those we found has even year elections. They are all standalone off-year elections, and I am unalterably opposed to the fact that we need to stay in that groove and have our own focused, I'm an intentional, not a casual city voter type of election.
Matt, with a city size of how many, 70,000?
Mm-hmm.
How many voters come out currently? 2,000?
I don't have the
3,300
statistics.
in 2019.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
3,300. I think that number is a shame. I think that the intent is not to dilute the quality of the vote we're getting now, but to charge ourselves with informing and creating a more educated citizenry and getting people to come out and vote for the right reasons, and that we should not be looking for a more controlled vote, but for a more inclusive vote. And I mean that in the most sincere way. But I'll go with the majority on this one. Thank you.
Well, we've sort of veered off just from an order standpoint because I think we wanted to have the discussion about the transition provisions to put things in context. If we're having that discussion, we can skip ahead to that question on the election cycle question and then circle back if we want to vote on that issue. Otherwise, I'm just trying to steer the discussion or focus it on getting through. So do we want to, we're having that discussion, would you like to hear the ballot question for this issue, for the election cycles, and we can circle back?
My sense is apparently for some, that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and whether or not that goes is going to color some of the other conversations. So, we can take them in order, we can take them out of order. It matters not to me. What's important to the body to address first? I mean, these are in the order in which they appear in the charter. There's no priority, there's no preference. The order in which they appear as questions are based upon their placement in the current charter.
I think we should just take them organically. As it was mentioned earlier, I don't think for me, one doesn't, if one of them don't pass, it has no bearing on the other ones for me. So since we're having this conversation, just continue to have the conversation organically, and then let the chips fall where they may from there. So while we're talking about even and odd elections, let's just flow with it. I believe another council person wanted to chime in.
Did I miss someone?
Was it you, Councilman Ross? Okay.
Either one, doesn't matter to me. I agree. That's all I'm going to say. I agree. Exactly.
That's the safe sentence, Councilwoman.
I do agree with both of you. You know, we do need that bigger turnout. I personally don't see how moving it to an even year is going to. I'm guilty, younger, you know, back in the day. Some of my first elections that I voted in, there are a lot of things that I didn't read on. And being up here now, you see how important that is, that you're not just checking boxes. And on the other hand, I do see us being a big enough city to, you know, to do better with getting more voters out and sticking to an odd year election. But then again, just to remind everyone, these are charter changes and they're huge deals, and that is why we can't do it alone. It is going to go out to the public, so just making sure that we remember we have our own opinions on things, and in the end, it's going to be left up to the voters. So, you know, things like this, if there's ideas on how we would be able to get more voters out and be educated voters, then we need to make that educated decision. But I think that we are big enough to stand on our own for the odd years still. Thank you.
So I think then the discussion's veering toward, let's just take it in the order in which they come. I think as I recall, we got hung up on the application, either retroactively or toward the future, on the potential application of clarifying the hard 12 years.
On the hard 12 years, so it's either, I'd like to take this in two parts. One, if we'd like a motion to move the question of the hard 12 years forward, that would be good. And then secondarily, or if someone wants to make a combined motion, if I could have instruction on when, if we want that to apply to the terms that have currently been served, or if we want it to be prospective, is the other question on that particular. Then,
As much as I hate to admit it, given the ambiguity and the differences of memory versus what's in the prior minutes, I think in fairness, we can't really change the rules midstream or three-quarters of the stream for those who have already served. So, you know, I'd like the 12-year hard stop to go forward, but, you know, I believe it needs to be on the ballot. But again, that sense of fairness to Mr. Shelley and in particular, and the Vice Mayor, Mr. Ross, coming up on midway point on his 12 years, at least on council. And,
Are we voting for a hard 12 just on the number, and then there's another decision as to what constitutes the 12 versus like the vacating versus...
Do we want to amend the charter to impose the hard 12? If we want to impose that limit, then the secondary question is, what constitutes that 12? Or is it retroactive and apply to the terms that have been served, or is it prospective so that it does not?
So question one, we can vote on the hard 12 now. Let's just do that.
well, correct.
And
But
then-
remember, the hard 12 means you can go home for 2 years and come back.
Yes. Yes, what constitutes 12 consecutive years of service towards that limit are we counting this? And if it's prospective, what will be included when this comes back to you is either way, what will be included is an additional transition provision specifying whatever your will is.
Mayor, if I may, just,
Or, thank you, Vice Mayor, appreciate it.
I am a strong proponent of term limits. I don't think you should have a lifetime service in office because you need new blood and fresh blood. And I don't think you should try to circumvent it to extend your term. So I am for a hard 12 years. Part B we can discuss, but 12 years.
I agree with the Vice Mayor. Mr. Fletcher?
I echo her sentiments. It's, public service is meant to be that, a period of time, and let somebody new come in and take over the reins.
Councilman?
I'll make the motion.
I will second.
All right. Now, let's be clear what we're moving on.
This is,
I guess we're looking at
Item 2, term limits.
Moving
Question two, term
forward,
limits.
and then we can take I can take a sense of
All right.
when you
so
would like that to be imposed.
Councilman Roth moves the approval of question 2 regarding what we've called the hard 12. Do I hear a second? Second from Councilman Fletcher. Is there any further discussion on question 2? Is there anyone online or in the audience? All right, let's have a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Bailey? Councilwoman Avila? Councilman Fletcher?
Yes.
Councilman Roth? Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers?
Yes.
Mayor Losner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you. Now, we're
Now-
going to get to part B in a minute, but it's not the next question, correct? Or do we want to
Well,
skip
with
to the
I'd
calculation?
like, while we're here, to your point, Mary, and this is to clear up an ambiguity because this was discussed at the committee level, whether or not it was the original intention when the 12-year term limit was initially imposed, whether it was supposed to be a hard 12, it was not. Ultimately, it was not drafted that way. It was 12 in one, 8 in the other. As the mayor indicated, the minutes were sort of inconclusive. So we have to specify, in the absence of specificity, it would be presumed to be prospective as a substantive change and would not apply retroactively. So for the purposes of calculating this hard 12 limit, do we want that to be imposed on current members, or should we look prospectively, push that out so that that hard 12 would not apply to certain seats? And I'll have to play with the transition language, and I'll bring it back to you when you see this again. But that's the question here.
Thank you, Matt. Vice Mayor, did you want to weigh in on that?
Sure.
And I say that because your microphone's on.
I'm completely
Wait,
okay with it.
before you do that, Matt, if you don't mind, or do you mind taking off your mask? I'm having a hard time understanding you tonight. Thank you. Vice Mayor.
So your question was, should it apply to current members or?
Well, should it apply prospectively, or is this, for example, let's say, I'm just, pick anybody, Councilman Roth has served, his second term. Should the hard 12 be imposed if he were to run for mayor after his second term? Or do we not want to count the amount of time, or Councilwoman Bailey or Councilwoman, do we not want to count the amount of time accrued towards that hard 12 limit?
Honestly, I think it should be a hard 12.
Oh, and that's fine. For clarity, I think
Yeah.
that I would, whatever the will of the council is, it is. I want to make sure that when we do this, we are clear so that we're not having a fight in the future.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I think that's the noble and honorable path to take. I think it respects the will of the people from 2002.
Right, and I agree. With the hard 12 thing, I forgot what my question was going to be. After all
You were
that.
the example, come on.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I don't know who'd want to do this beyond 12 years. I don't, it's challenging enough. But this all, I mean, even the additional conversations we're having won't really mean anything until it gets on ballot and the voters actually pass it. So are
Correct.
you saying that we have to make a decision of when it starts, even if we don't know that it's going to pass?
Yeah.
And that's going to be deployed out, and the voters will be educated on what the underlying decision of voting yes or no for this actually means to the elected body that will serve now or in the future. Because if you answer the question hard 12, to me that's pretty specific. You can serve 12 years. I don't care how you do it. You can do 4 as council, you can run 4 as mayor, and then you can run 4 as council again.
Mix it up however you
You
want.
can do whatever you want.
Yes.
Once you get to that 12th year, it's done. You can
I
take
think the
that to
people
your.
will understand that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So I don't know that, because I'm hearing when do you want it to start? Well, it could start with me, I don't care, it can start with whomever. But once it's in there, it's there. I mean, it really won't affect anybody that's sitting up here today, I don't think. I mean,
Well, that's the very question.
I ask for clarity because unless something specifically says that it's supposed to apply retroactively, it really only applies prospectively. And because you're taking into account time that may have accrued for each of you in various instances, I want to make sure that there's an understanding that, you know, that if we go the hard 12, that hard 12 will be inclusive of the time that's served. And if we don't clarify that that's the intent in a transition provision, then theoretically somebody in the future can say, well, if you were to look at case law, something that does not specify that it was supposed to accumulate retroactively or apply retroactively, could only be prospective. And so you could have an instance theoretically where someone would say that, well, that may have been the spirit, but it doesn't say that, and because it doesn't apply retroactively, it doesn't apply to me or the time that I had served prior to the amendment. So, and that's why I ask when we want it to apply. It does not matter one way or the other to me. I just, for clarity's sake, I think it should be included in a transition provision so that whatever happens in the future, everyone understands right now what the implications of the adoption of this question
So, okay,
would be,
so if the
this proposed
voters
amendment would
accept that hard 12, so the question would then be, does it take effect immediately at that moment?
Does
or
it count the
take
terms of service that have already been accrued?
Retro.
Right.
That's the
which-
thresholds question.
That's in the enabling ordinance that he will write to implement. That's what he needs.
It would just say that basically a transition provision would say, for the purposes of implementing this, that it shall apply to all terms served by current members. So it'll always apply going forward without question.
Okay.
But that somebody who has served 4 years as council member already could not then try to obfuscate by doing one more as council and then 8 as mayor to get to a total of 16. So I just want to make it clear what the intent is. And if the intent is it applies to all of the terms that you have served, it's a single sentence that goes in the transition provisions. If it's not, it creates a bit of ambiguity, and I'd like to say, okay, if it doesn't, what terms should it apply to? And then I'll provide that in a transition provision, which will come before you and you will see, and to make sure that you're comfortable with it. But that point is the one that I need the direction on.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, as am I. Councilman Fletcher?
So, you know, this is going to affect myself and Councilwoman Avila most, because more so me, I've got 2 years previous.
That doesn't
Yeah,
count
that
towards
counts.
this.
It
Doesn't
does.
count.
If you do a hard 12,
No, with a 2-year gap. You got to have a 2-year gap.
It
The
still
hard
says
12
that.
is the consecutive years of service. It's not a hard 12 forever. It remains the
It's
consecutive years of service.
That's not
So
a
you would
lifetime
still
cap.
allow for a 2-year
No
break.
lifetime cap.
I'd rather it be lifetime, but that's me.
Now, wait a minute.
Separate question.
Oh, well, I see what he's saying. 12 and go.
I think in effect, that's really what you're doing.
Yeah.
With 4-year council term, that's a long time for somebody.
Yeah.
That's a separate issue that was not addressed by the committee.
I think it's very humbling of my colleagues to want to have it as a hard 12-year cap, and especially for those of you that have the tenure, it throws you out of the future mayoral races right away. I think that you should be grandfathered in, and that you should have known what you were running for under which charter codes when you were running and holding the seat. I think it should be active for future, not retroactive.
Thank you. Councilman Bailey? Nothing? Okay. So, do you need a formal motion or just some consensus?
Well, I'd like a motion so that I can prepare. Based on the motion, I'll be preparing a transition provision, and I would
Vice
like
Mayor,
to
would you
know
like to make a
exactly what
motion?
that should be.
Motion that oh, sorry. I motion that this is in effect retroactively.
So that it's imposed on
Yes.
current council members and the terms they've served.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that. Anything further? Anything further? All right, let's have a roll call vote.
Councilman Fletcher?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bailey? Yes. Councilman Roth?
Yes.
Councilwoman Avila? Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers?
Yes.
Mayor Losner?
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you.
Thank you. So when this comes back, there'll be that applicable, that additional line in the transition provisions that sets that forth.
I have a question to clarify.
Yes, sir.
Does the years of my appointment apply towards that 12-year cap?
Yes, it's years of service. So you would have accumulated just under 2 years of service, I think, at your coming election point. So yes, that would count. Every term that everybody has served, every year that everybody served would count towards the 12-year cap. It would apply to, regardless of how many each of you has served, it would all count towards that.
You only get to do 9 and change anyway, as a council member. Because of the,
Because of the term change of the 4
well,
years?
no,
No, it's also because you cannot.
partial term.
You cannot run for an office if you're not eligible to sit for the entire time. And that's not a proposal, that's something that's existing. So if you can't fulfill a final term of office and serve the full term, then you're not eligible for that particular seat.
So I would only
So
be
you'd have to
eligible
take
to
a year
run for
break.
mayor?
With the hard 12, you'd have you could run for, depends on, well, it depends on the outcome of the mayoral 2-year or 4-year term question.
Exactly, thank
I
you.
don't,
But-
I
but
can't
the-
say.
Under the existing rules, you are eligible only to run this time and one more time. Again, to serve the 9 years and change, because a third election would violate the 12-year rule that exists now.
But could have transitioned to run for mayor without the hard 12, the cumulative cap.
Right. All right, what's the next one? 3, resign to run notice?
Yes. So this one is fairly straightforward. It will relate to another question, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So the city charter currently does not require an elected official desiring to resign their office to run for another elected office of the city prior to the city's qualifying period. Shall the charter be amended to require an elected official desiring to resign their office in order to run for another elected office in the city to provide the city clerk with 30 days' notice of their intent to resign to run for another city office? So this dovetails with another question regarding how we want to fill vacancies, as they are currently filled by appointment. One of the proposals is that if there is a year or more remaining in a term, that would be filled by a special election. And so the interplay between the two would be that if you had previously, and Councilwoman Avila is the perfect example, if you had somebody who, and this is, well, an imperfect example because Councilman Maldonado did not run for another city office, but had Councilman Maldonado decided to resign to run for mayor, theoretically, that office is filled, that vacancy that's creating the council seat was filled by an appointment. If the amendment, the additional question were to be adopted and passed, that vacancy would then be filled by an election. And the reason that this resign to run proposal was that it was intended to give the clerk time to have that vacancy filled at the regularly scheduled election, as opposed to having to schedule a special election if that person didn't resign until the last day of qualifying. So it would allow the clerk the time necessary to work with the Dade County Supervisor of Elections to have the vacancy that's filled filled at an election without incurring the cost of a standalone special election. The one caveat I wanted to give is this question was brought before you previously, And based on that discussion, at the time, I believe it was Councilman Shelley, had requested that the charter language itself allow that notice to be withdrawn 10 days prior, so that in case there was a change of heart at some point prior to qualifying, that person would be allowed to withdraw, which would be fine, because then you're not having to put that, there would be no vacancy created for that additional seat, and people would still know before qualifying whether that vacancy existed. So that's based on that recommendation, that withdrawal period, or the ability to withdraw, remains in the proposed charter language.
Council, questions?
So the 10-day withdrawal is already there?
It's in the charter. This required, this notice requirement does not exist currently.
Right.
But when we last met, this question was brought before us, and what the council discussed at that time was that there should be some flexibility. And so it was proposed at the time, and the council consented to this proposal, that 10 days prior, you can withdraw that notice and decide to stay in your seat for whatever reason. And that sort of coincides with the state's resign to run in order to stay in your seat for the duration of your term. So as written and proposed now, it includes the ability to withdraw that 10 days prior to qualifying.
Understand.
So, and stay in your seat.
Just a question, has it ever happened before? Where somebody resigned?
Yeah.
And then ran for, like, they were sitting on council and ran for mayor, or vice versa, in our city?
Many, many years ago, then Councilman Bateman resigned in the middle of a four-year term to challenge Mayor Shiver.
Okay.
In 2007, I resigned in the middle of my second four-year term to run in a race that ultimately ended up against future Mayor Bell.
Okay.
So
So it has
yes,
happened.
that does happen, and then, appointments were necessary.
Afterwards.
So this 30-day resignation gives others the opportunity or the notice that, hey, there may be an opportunity for me to run for a seat, and that vacancy filled by regular election, rather than by a costly special election.
That
But
makes
it
sense.
does give you, if you decided to run for mayor, you give that notice, and it's a predicate to running.
Is there
but
time?
you do get to change your mind.
There's no time for that. I don't have time for that. Okay, no, that's more clear, and the fact that they can change their mind within 10 days of qualifying is helpful too, because then there's really no harm, no foul, and anything they've done prior to that is on them.
Well, and the other guys may be out of luck.
And-
The guy that was getting, or the guy or girl that was getting geared up to run is out of luck.
Yeah.
But it's better than only having 10
Exactly.
days notice
No,
that,
no,
hey,
I
I've got
agree.
to I need to gear up for this opportunity that I did not
I agree.
know about.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, and to be really clear, that prospective resignation is a requirement to run. Again, in the example, if you decided you wanted to run for mayor midway through one of your terms, in order to be qualified to run for mayor, you have to have given that 30-day notice.
Right. Yeah, I get that part.
And you can revoke it.
And you can pull it back.
You can pull it back, but you don't get to run unless you gave the notice.
Got it.
And the 10 days kind of dovetails with the state resign to run law as well.
Got it.
That notice is already in the charter now, or is that what we're voting on now?
No, that is what we're voting on now creates a notice.
30-day notice? Okay.
Correct.
So I thought we were on the voting whether or not we would have this process, or just as is the appointment process, correct?
We're going to come
Well,
to
no,
that.
this
getting there, yeah.
dovetails, as is the appointment process, and there's a separate question that we'll get to for the appointment, whether or not we want to fill vacancies by election. This is simply at this point, it dovetails, and it was part of the discussion, which is why I raised it, because the discussion did turn in part on sparing the city the expense of a special election if that were to be adopted. So the notice provision, it's a standalone question. It's not an obligation that currently exists in the charter. It would be a new obligation to notify if you wanted to resign halfway through your term to run for another city office.
Thank you for the clarification.
Further questions, comments?
Just one
Yes.
though. So if you start thinking about the 4-year mayor term, if the mayor's got 4 years, can anybody resign halfway through their term? I guess the other three council members that ran in the 2 years opposite of when the mayor runs, they would have to give up part of their term, right?
If your race is in the mayoral cycle, you don't have to give that notice because your seat's up for election
Right.
anyway.
But the ones that aren't
The ones that are not on the mayoral cycle have to make that decision.
have to make that decision.
But either way, even if it were only a 2-year mayoral term,
Same thing.
as we have now,
Same
you know,
thing.
use the example that I had and Steve Bateman had, decided to take that leap of faith and go for it.
Gotcha. And then if you're sitting on council in the mayor's election year, you would have, you couldn't run for both seats.
No, one or the other.
You'd have to run for one or the other. Okay, fair enough.
All right. Is there anyone online? Okay. Anyone in the audience? All right, do we have a motion on question 3?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councilman Roth. Second by the Vice Mayor. Roll call?
Councilman Fletcher,
Yes.
Councilman Roth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Bailey, Councilwoman Avila,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers, Mayor Losner,
Yes.
the motion carries.
Thank you. Back to you, Matt.
Okay. Question 4 revisits term limits, and it's the city charter currently provides an individual may serve for 12 consecutive years as council member or 8 consecutive years as mayor. Shall the charter be amended to provide that a mayor or council member who resigns prior to the completion of their term be deemed to have served all the years of their term? And this discussion dealt with the hypothetical resignation of somebody, 6 months prior to the completion of the 12 years of service. And because our charter provides for consecutive years of service, would that have been deemed 12 consecutive years? And the discussion at the committee level was to eliminate any ambiguity. So thus the proposal.
Well, and again, and again, I'll use him as an example. There was some talk as to whether or not Mr. Burgess would resign toward the end of, in the waning months of his term to create a break in service in order to be eligible to run for mayor. That's what this question addresses, as to, it wipes that out, that you can't, again, it's one of those 12-year safeguards, that 12-year hard stop, that it doesn't let you go almost to 12 and then bail out to get that artificial, well, call it an artificial extension, but that extension in fact.
But aren't you eligible to serve, again, another 12 years or another 8 years after a break in service, just like Councilman Fletcher said?
Absolutely.
So
Correct.
if we have a hard stop on 12, then a break is a break. If you have 2 years of a break in service, whether you left your seat for health reasons, different reasons, if you have a break, you have a break.
No, but in the example I was using, Councilman Burgess was coming up to 12 years on council. And the way the charter is written now has been construed perhaps, because he would have been jumping from council to mayor, there's not that combination language now. Is that correct, Matt?
Correct.
What we did earlier tonight was combined the years of service and didn't make the distinction between council and mayor.
So the way it used to read was a break in service was not required when switching from council to mayor.
No,
It didn't say
right.
that either.
no, if I
Mayor to
may.
mayor is and council to council is.
That's the way it was being interpreted because there wasn't a clarification. There
Well,
was an ambiguity.
It wasn't an ambiguity, it was a question, there's not an ambiguity in the language, it would be the application of the language. So you have a 2-year break in service requirement when you have served you have fulfilled your consecutive years of service. The theoretical or the hypothetical situation that could arise is somebody creates a situation where they have not served 12 consecutive years, they have served 11 years and 11 years and 11 consecutive months, but not 12 consecutive years. And so they could try to make the argument based on the current language that should apply.
That makes sense to me, and I think that the spirit is to still create that break in service. So I think that maybe this question needs to be written differently so that if you do vacate within your term and there is 2 years left in your service, then you are satisfying the requirement.
So there was discussion at the committee level about, all right, how much of a term served should constitute your term? You know, is it a year? Is it half your term? Is it 3/4 of the term? Ultimately, this was the recommendation that if you served, a portion of it, you've served all of it. If the council wishes to amend that or go in a different direction, let me know. But it was a discussion that was had, what portion, but this is where the committee landed, basically.
I think the spirit is to create that break in service, and so, with respect to the committee for the recommendation, I would still want to revise it so that we're creating the break. We're establishing what the break is and how the break is established.
Haven't we done that?
I think we're talking, just so I understand. So in your hypothetical, it would be somebody has served, a year and a half of their term. They fall ill. For whatever reason, they're required to step down. At the end of that term, whatever the situation was that forced them out, they'd like to come back. You'd like the time that they were out to count as your 2-year break in service. So in order to do that, we'd have to make a sort of a separate accommodation, I think, because now it's if you've served your term, you've served all of your term, regardless of the timing of your resignation. And remember, this was a discussion that was had at the committee level. It did get a little confusing as to, all right, where do we want to draw that line? As I said, the committee just landed at a portion. If you would like to go in a different direction, you can direct me to address that, and I can try and bring back some proposed language to say that if you've served X amount of your term, then you have deemed to serve, or more than half, then you have deemed to served all of your term. Would sort of be in the spirit of the 2-year break in service, but I'll need a little clarification.
And quite frankly, Matt, and again, I want to remind my colleagues, I didn't have a vote on the committee. I was moderating the meetings. And I was kind of surprised, and I don't really understand where they were coming from on this. There was some discussion that, and whether it needs to be expressed as half or 2 years, for me, if you resigned halfway through a 4-year term, you're going to have that break in service. And other rules prevent you from exceeding that 12, that so long as you don't go over the 2, you shouldn't be tagged with the last 2.
Well,
and how does that play
and
out in the real world?
And that may be the intent, but the language that we're proposing for the charter is that if you've served a portion of your term, you're deemed to serve all of it. So,
well, under this question.
So I could look to make, well, let me just revert back to section 2032. I could look to make a slight tweak if it's the will of the council. We can amend the question to address that particular. Okay, so if you go, it's the proposed charter language is any member who resigns prior to the completion of his or her term shall be deemed to serve all the years of the service. So it is all encompassing. So you're not getting, the way it's written, you're not getting the value of that break in service. So if we want to provide for that, then I would suggest what we do is, and this was presented to the committee with options. Like the option A was if you serve a day. Among the options was half of the term. So it could be 2 years and a day you're deemed to have served all of it, which would then allow you to, if you capture that 2-year break in service, I can amend the proposed language and the charter question to reflect that if that's the will of the council, but it's just not where the committee landed.
Well,
So
and
I have no.
And I think our overall intent is that we don't create or preserve any of that hard 12 loophole. You know, you've got to be out one way.
Right, but it's not a hard 12 if there's a phantom 2 in there.
That's right.
So
And that's true. It's just not where the committee went. They were presented with
So
options. They stuck with the strictest interpretation.
So you're going to bring back all these questions rewritten
Well,
for a final approval?
We'll have that discussion. It depends on kind of where we go. Thus far, we've approved sort of everything as we've gone without any amendment, with the addition of the charter provision. So I presume we won't want this on consent, which theoretically, if we went all the way through, we could. So we won't put this on consent. So you'll have another opportunity to discuss this. But for directional purposes, if this would foreclose the situation, a 2-year break gap in the situation you're describing would not be construed as a break in service under the language as it was proposed. They took the strictest interpretation of that. So if we want something else, I can do that, but I need a little direction on what you would like that to be.
Well, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor. If this question were thrown out, it never reached the ballot, and everything else passed, do we still have that hard 12 safeguard and that safeguard against someone resigning 6 months or 60 days prior to the end of their term to seek a different office?
This was the question that was intended to address that particular issue because our charter, for reasons based on, this was just historically transitioning from some 2-year terms, some 4-year term. We have consecutive years of service as opposed to terms served. So this was meant to address that consecutive years of service question. And in the absence of this, addressing it in some way, then you can have your hard 12, but it's still written as consecutive years of service, so that theoretical argument out there in the ether would still exist.
Okay. This is necessary because the charter is full of the word consecutive. Gotcha. Okay. Vice Mayor?
No, I just wanted to ask Councilman Avila through the mayor, do you have a specific recommendation of what you would like to propose for the language to read?
I'd like for it to read that your term is considered filled with the exception of having practiced a 2-year break within your term. I'm sure that you can come up with the right legal language.
Well, the way that I would phrase it is that if you will be deemed to have served the entirety of your term if you have served for more than half of your term. And that was the way it was phrased when it was proposed to the committee, because then if you were to have resigned prior to serving half of your term, you have your 2-year break in service, right? And you won't have been deemed to have served the entirety of the term. So it was really just a question of how much of the term needed to be served. If it's 2 years, then I'll address it that way. I can easily craft the language for that. And this way, if somebody does not serve more than half of their term, that 2-year break in service can be created. If they go over that half, then that line of demarcation has been crossed, and you can't break the chain of consecutive years of service if you have 18 months left, theoretically.
I think that's fair. I think that solves the break-in service problem and the last-minute resignation issue.
So if that's what we'd like, I'll take that direction and I'll bring that back to you as a revised question with revised charter language reflecting that.
Counselor, are we good with that? You got your direction.
I'm good. I just have one question, though, that kind of goes with this is, how does that affect any benefits that they receive after they leave? Not that we get that many benefits now, but in the future, they may receive different benefits than what we get today, as far as time served, when it comes to if they, let's say they serve one term, and they start their second term, and they get vested, which I believe is 5 years, and they resign on day one of year 6. Are they entitled to whatever benefits and pensions and all that stuff from that period forward, or is it from the moment that they resign? Because they didn't really serve, but if you're giving them time served for that period of time, then they would be entitled to whatever benefits and whatnot.
So the answer, I don't know the answer to the impact right now, but what I will say is this. Each time we do charter amendments, there are code implications because the charter is the broad document and our code implements that. So the benefits, that's all codification, it's not in the charter. So we could return to that and you could decide how you would like that to be counted for the purposes of benefits in addressing that ordinance and that plan. It's not going to be determined here on a ballot. It's not an issue that's incorporated into the charter. It's something that we can revisit by ordinance depending on the outcome of the election.
Got it. So, yeah, this closes all those loopholes of people trying to manipulate the 2-year break of service. So,
And I think that's what's important.
yeah, let's go with that.
All right, so you've got
And
your
then you get some
direction on-
changes or whatever you got to make.
Got your
So
direction on
I will
4.
bring back question 4 in a revised format that will basically say something to the effect of if you have served half of your term, you will have been deemed to have served the entirety of the term. Or, half plus 1 day, I'll map that out.
Yeah.
And the corresponding language in the charter to reflect that. So that'll be how we address question 4.
I mean, really, in reality, if we get a 4-year mayor term, then it's really means hardly anything at that point because there's no reason to resign if you want to seek another office. I don't think you'd be mayor and then want to seek an office to go down to a council person.
It's happened. Mayors have come back and served a long time on council.
Well, no, I mean, but as far as breaking the term
Yep.
to step down from mayor to run, for council, it'd be like
Sure.
you stepping down from mayor to run for seat 5 or whatever seat is in the northwest section.
That'd be fun.
So, but
All right.
seat 6, is that what it was?
Yeah, C1.
C1?
I'm C1.
C1.
I'm 1. All right.
Okay, so moving on to question 5.
Question 5.
The city charter currently provides for the filling of a vacancy in a council member seat by appointment. Shall the charter be amended to require that a vacancy in a council member seat to be filled by special election if 1 year or more remain in the term and by appointment with less than 1 year remaining in the term? It's fairly
Counsel?
straightforward.
As am I. Mr. Fletcher, you good? Council?
How much is a special election?
100 grand.
No, but we've built in safeguards in the enabling ordinance to piggyback on
To the extent
upcoming.
that we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
If there's another election within a certain time frame, we'll piggyback on that election. Otherwise, it's to be held within 90 days. And I think it's 120 I believe 120 days. If there's another election, then we'll wait to piggyback on to try and save the cost. But nevertheless, if it's not a resignation pursuant to the notice provision and we don't, it's just the seat is vacant, there's more than a year.
Or you die.
And there's not an election that's upcoming to piggyback on, we will be holding a special election. And Liz, I'm sorry, I can't speak to the cost. I know that you
It
would,
depends, but it could be about 20,000
for a special or to piggyback.
to piggyback.
And if it's a standalone, what was it? It was significantly more,
Like 126,000.
120 something thousand.
However, we did recognize that, some municipalities now for special type elections are using all mail-in. And there are significant savings there. And that would just be something that the council would have to address at that point. The intent I'll say, my perspective was, the feeling of the committee is that appointing someone to serve for more than 1 year without being elected was something they wanted to adjust.
I think that the council did a fantastic job with the way that they handled the last appointment, and I wouldn't change it.
Okay, so, yeah, the voters are going to tell us. So do we have a motion on question 5?
Will the cost of the special election be included in the language on the ballot?
It will not,
Why?
because it'll vary from time to time, and so we have no idea, depending on when the election comes. I think that Liz could speak to this. It's sort of fluid, what the county will tell you. Probably cheaper 10 years ago than it was today, and the charter's meant to be in place for quite a while.
Really interesting.
And it's out of our control. We can't dictate, the cost of the election.
Yeah. Look, I think the people want to say. Well, all right. So do we have a motion on question 5, filling of council vacancy?
I'll second.
Moved by Councilwoman Bailey, second by Councilman Fletcher. Let's have a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Bailey, Councilman Roth, Councilwoman Avila,
Hesitantly, yes.
Councilman Fletcher,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers, Mayor Losner.
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you. You'll
Okay.
never have to go through the appointment again. Don't worry about it.
Selfishly, it takes the problem off my hands.
Okay.
Question 6.
2006.
So the
Wait a
charter
minute, she
currently.
said it takes a problem off her hands. Are you going to run for
Having-
mayor? Oh,
Of having to make an appointment.
okay, all right, yeah, absolutely.
The city charter currently provides for council member seat vacancies to be filled by appointment and allows allows the mayor an exclusive 60-day window to nominate an individual to fill the vacancy. Shall the charter be amended to extend the mayor's exclusive window to nominate an individual to fill a vacancy to 90 days? And this just goes to our sort of our last process. There was just a general discussion about the time it took and how long, and so this was one of amongst the proposals.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we talked about I appreciate it, but, we talked about the notice to folks to send in their interest and resumes. Fell through the holidays, hurricane season, 60 days was kind of tight. All right, so we have a motion from Councilman Roth, second by the Vice Mayor. Is there anyone online? All right, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Avila,
Yes.
Councilwoman Bailey, Councilman Fletcher, Councilman Roth, Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers, Mayor Losner.
Yes,
The motion carries.
Okay.
deep breath, number 7.
Question 7. The city charter currently requires that regularly scheduled primary and general elections be held on each odd number year. Shall the charter be amended to provide that regularly scheduled primary and general elections be held in each even number year, commencing with 2028 and 2030 elections respectively, including applicable transition provisions? And those are the provisions that we previously went through. I'm happy to review them again if you feel it's necessary.
Thank you. No, all right, there is a motion to deny election date cycle question 7. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Fletcher. Any discussion?
When we discussed this last time, I had mentioned that I know moving to even years, it will potentially bring out more voters, so draw a larger turnout because it will coincide with the presidential election. But I believe my position was that we kind of want more engaged voters. Those voters who come out on even years are very, very in tune to what's going on in the community. They are aware. And I was more in favor of that. I recognize that we need to do a little bit more to draw our voters out, albeit presidential years, even years or odd years. But I lean more towards maintaining where we are now on odd years so that you get more of a quality voter. And we put in a little bit more sweat equity to get out the vote. So I maintain my position.
Thank you. Well said, Vice Mayor. And just want to kind of render an opinion that I think the last presidential cycle will create far more engagement and participation in local elections whenever and however they're held. I think people are far more engaged. Council? All right. Is there anyone online? No one in the audience? So let's have a roll call vote on question 7.
This was a motion
to deny.
to remove this from the
Remove.
resolution. Okay.
Councilman Fletcher? Councilwoman Bailey? Councilman Roth? Councilwoman Avila?
No.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers? Mayor Losner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Question 8.
Okay.
2 more. They're
Two
easy.
more. Question 8 deals with filling a vacancy in the office of vice mayor. The city charter currently provides, in the event of a vacancy in the office of the vice mayor, the council shall designate an interim vice mayor from amongst its remaining members. Shall the charter be amended to provide that a vacancy in the office of vice mayor be filled by the council member who received the next highest number of votes in the previous vice mayor election?
And that's pretty straightforward, and there's the caveat in the enabling ordinance that if either the runner-up in the vice mayor's race declines, then the designation defaults to council, and if there was only that one person in the vice mayor's race, then it becomes a council decision. So we've covered that. Councilman Roth?
That was going to be my question. Because I think we had to do that, didn't we? At one point, we had to. I think we put Burgess in as a
Correct.
vice
Correct.
mayor when Porter stepped down, and the last election cycle there was only one vice mayor candidate.
Correct. And
So-
we've covered that.
So we've
contingency.
covered all that. So what?
The committee's thought was it just accedes to the will of the voters. If someone else stuck their neck out to run, and
that they should automatically.
they should
become
automatically,
vice
for the
mayor.
balance of that term.
And then you have the problem if they get more vice mayor votes than they do council votes.
Well, but they're not up here anyway.
They wouldn't be up here anyway. So
that-
it
that's
still
thrown
defaults
out.
back to
Yes.
the other stuff. Okay.
The
fair enough.
prevailing, yeah.
I can ask them that. That's fine.
Any other questions from council? Anyone online or in the audience? All right, so do we have a motion to approve question 8, to forward question 8, moved by the vice mayor? Second by Councilwoman Bailey. Roll call?
Councilwoman Bailey? Councilwoman Avila? Councilman Roth?
Yes.
Councilman Fletcher?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers? Mayor Losner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, last one, easy, I hope.
This question was also previously brought before you. It's dealing with the composition of the Charter Review Committee. The charter currently provides that the regularly scheduled Charter Review Committee be comprised of 5 members appointed by the mayor subject to council approval. Shall the charter be amended to provide that the regularly scheduled Charter Review Committee be comprised of 7 members with each council member appointing a single member?
Councilman?
Yes.
Amen,
Move it.
thank you. And to
I'll
move
second.
it, and we all set, Councilman Fletcher beat each to the button, okay. Any public comment? Roll call?
Councilwoman Avila? Councilman Roth? Councilwoman Bailey? Councilman Fletcher?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers? Mayor Losner?
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you. Anything further, Mr. Pearl?
No, so I will be bringing this back to you. It won't be on consent. And with the 2 amendments that were discussed, one will remove the even year election cycle question, and the other will amend the language dealing with how years are accrued. It will be amended to, instead of being any portion of the term, it'll be more than half of the term where you will have accrued the full term. And so with those changes, I'll bring this back to you for the council agenda. Okay?
Thank you. It comes to council next week. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, but I'm sorry,
Yes.
can I quickly request an executive session before
Of
we?
course you can.
move on? Thank you. I need an executive session in the matter of Dr. James McDonough versus the City of Homestead, Elizabeth Sewell et al., case number 19-035962. Thank you.
Make it happen. Motion to adjourn? Thank you all. Appreciate it. Good night.